Hey everyone, it's Kevin Wallace again, and as we're getting started in a brand new year and we might have different certification goals ahead of us, I thought it might be a good idea to start out this year without jumping directly into a specific certification topic and taking a look at one exam for this month. I've been on vacation, been relaxing, been thinking about how do we want to lay things out for the next year, what topics do we want to address, and I thought it might be a good idea to get started by talking about the psychology of certification, the mindset. Because as you're going after certification, you need strategies. You need study strategies. You need strategies as to handle the time pressure on the exam. How do you manage your emotions on the exam? Have you ever been in an exam and got panicked? Many people have. How do we manage that? Do we get nervous before the exam? How do we make the most effective use of our study time? What sort of goals do we have, and how can we better achieve those goals? That's what we want to talk about in this discussion, the psychology of certification. And let's start off with something you see in just a ton of self-help books out there, and that's goal setting. Personally, I'm a huge fan of many of the self-development speakers out there. I've been to the seminars of Anthony Robbins and Zig Ziglar, and I got to meet them at the seminar. And if you really want to dive into goal setting, I would recommend their material. They are experts in the field of goal setting. They can walk you through different steps to clearly articulate your goals and put force behind your goals. Give you the motivation to really go after the goals. But let's talk about it just in general right now. When we're setting goals, we need to be specific. If our goal says, I want to get more Cisco certifications, well, that's kind of general, isn't it? We could be a bit more specific by saying that, well, I want to get my CCNA, or I want to get my CCNP, or I want to get my CCIE. That's a bit more specific, but I've heard it said that a goal is a dream with a timeline. When do you want to have your specific certification? We want to set some realistic target dates. And these target dates might be considered our long-range goals. In 6 months from now, I want to sit the CCIE Voice Lab for the second time as an example of a long-range goal. When I first started preparing for the Voice CCIE Lab, I set a 6-month goal. And in just over 6 months, I had taken the first attempt at the Voice CCIE Lab. Didn't pass that. It took me 3 times to get my route switch CCIE. But back to the long-range goals. Where do we want to find ourselves in a few months or in a few years? When I first started getting into Cisco certification, it was 1998. That's when I got my CCNA. It then took another 3 years to work my way up to the CCIE. I got my route switch CCIE back in 2001. We've got to have some long-range goals that we're going towards, and our activities in our shorter range goals should be leading to those longer range goals. So it's important not to just to have long range goals, we should have short range goals as well. What's a short range goal? Well, the short range goal might be to spend a certain number of hours studying OSPF or EIGRP during a particular week. Another book I was reading on goal setting, and I've read so many I'm not recalling which book this came from, but once I read that when you're setting your goals, you shouldn't set goals that depend on your achieving something, but goals based on what you can actually do. I kind of like to have a mixture of both kinds of goals, but here's what I mean by that. If you set a goal to understand EIGRP within a couple of weeks, that's not a really firm goal. You find yourself at the end of 2 weeks, you've studied a bit, and you think you understand it better than you did, and yeah, you might say that I've achieved my goal. But if you have an activity goal rather than an achievement goal, that's more measurable sometimes. You might have an activity goal that says, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day for the next 2 weeks reading through a book on EIGRP and labbing EIGRP, something that is more measurable. That way, when you find yourself at the end of 2 weeks, you now have 7 solid hours of study and hands-on labbing integrated with that towards learning EIGRP. So I'm a big fan of having activity goals where I can say, yes, I did this activity. And I'm a big fan also of having accomplishment goals because I want these activities to eventually lead me to these accomplishments. And to do that, we need to have shorter range goals because personally, if something is way off in the future, I tend to put it off. I need to have little milestones along the way, and I think we should celebrate our small victories. When you have a breakthrough and you understand something you didn't understand before, celebrate that. Tell your coworkers about it. Explain it to somebody else. And when I explain something that I've just learned to someone else, I'm anxious to share it with them. I'm excited about it. That's going to reinforce it in my mind. It gives me a sense of accomplishment, a sense of celebration when I figure something like that out. And that drives me forward to learn even more. And another important concept when setting your goals is defining the why. Why are you going after this goal? If you just say, I want to be a CCIA in 6 months, or I want to sit the lab in 6 months, well, that's great, but you're about to put in hundreds of hours of preparation, you might get a bit demotivated 2 weeks down the road or 2 months down the road. In order to keep yourself going, you need to have a clearly defined why. What is it that having a CCIE or a CCNP is going to do for you? You might say it's going to help your career. Okay, be more specific about that. It's going to help you advance to the next level in your organization. It's going to help you find a better job. It's going to provide more income for your family. Oftentimes we do more for others than we will do for ourselves. So if you associate accomplishing this goal with helping your family, that could help drive you on as well. So to sum up, when it comes to goal setting, there are some very thorough programs out there. Again, I recommend those by Zig Ziglar, Anthony Robbins, and there are plenty of others out there as well. But when you're setting your goals, write them down. Don't just put them in your mind mentally. Actually write them down. That makes them more tangible. And put the goals out on display where you're going to see them, or a task in Microsoft Outlook, wherever you're going to see it on a fairly regular basis. And have both long-range and short-range written goals. Some goals might be toward an achievement, like earning a certification, but the saying in business is, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. In order to measure progress, I also recommend having activity goals. A goal that might say, spend X number of hours studying this topic over the next week. You can measure that and have a clearly articulated why. Why are you going after this? What's going to be the benefit to you? What's going to be the benefit to others?